All right, and following Tuesday's sports wagering action, we're 3-0 in our last three $1.99 daily best plays on BrockPage.com. Before I get into that, I just want to take a quick time out and welcome you to the video. My name is Brock Page, and I do sports picks for free right here on YouTube. I also sell my personal bets on BrockPage.com. So if you want to see which one of these free YouTube picks on my channel that I'm actually betting on personally, there's only one way to do that, and that's to sign up for a membership on my webpage at BrockPage.com. Now, the Daily Best Play is the cheapest package that I offer on that website. It costs just $1.99, and you actually get access to those daily bets every single day, all the way through the end of March, for just the one-time fee of $1.99. Now, $1,000 bettors are up over $2,700 during my current 3-0 streak in that package. And if you want to access today's $1.99 daily best play, the link for that bet is in the description section below. And with that, guys, let's go ahead and dive into some March Madness. We're going to start with Michigan taking on Colorado State. That's going to be a 12:15 Eastern tip-off on Thursday, March 17th, 2022. Michigan's -1.5 with the total at 136. Now, the Wolverines are amongst the best defensive rebounding teams in the nation. These guys are actually in the top 10 in defensive boards per contest, and they're allowing only 69 points a game. Now, when it comes to the scoring in this one, Hunter Dickinson averages over 18 points per contest, along with 8 boards. Meanwhile, Eli Brooks is making nearly 40% of his three-pointers. He's also scoring over a dozen points a game. Now, when it comes to shooting the basketball, the Wolverines are making nearly 48% of their field goals. They're taking on a Colorado State team who has really shut it down offensively over the past couple of weeks. The Rams are averaging only 60 points a game in their last 6 outings. They're amongst the worst in the country in offensive rebounds. Now, total-wise, Colorado State went 7-2 to the under in their last 9 ball games. No real surprise there with their offensive struggles recently. The Rams are also 11-4 to the under in all of their contests this year away from home. Meanwhile, Michigan, on the other side of things, they saw 2 out of their last 3 neutral site games fall under the posted total themselves. I'm going to lean toward Michigan -1.5 in the under 136. Next ball game, it is going to be South Dakota State versus Providence, 12:40 p.m. East. Now, Providence is -2 with the total at 149.5. And even though Providence plays better competition throughout the year and better defense than South Dakota State, I don't think many folks realize how good the Jackrabbits are with the ball in their hands. As a matter of fact, South Dakota State is leading the entire country in shooting the 3-ball. These guys are making 45% of their three-pointers this season as a team, and they're actually averaging over 87 points per contest. And even when the Jackrabbits are away from their home court, they actually shoot better from the field when they travel. These guys are making nearly 54% of their field goals while traveling this season, and they also lead the nation in that particular category. Now, Charlie Easley, he's making 51% of his three-pointers. Alex Arians, he's shooting 50% from downtown as well. And those guys aren't even averaging double-digit points a game. Those guys aren't even amongst the top scorers on this team. It's actually Doug Wilson who's leading the program in points a game with 16.5 points a game, along with 5.5 rebounds. Meanwhile, Baylor Shireman, he's drilling nearly 48% of his shots from beyond the arc as well. He's also averaging over 16 points a game. I'll tell you what, South Dakota State, they're dangerous with the ball in their hands. I know I'm kind of reiterating that, but these guys have done a great job offensively. Now, believe it or not, they're also amongst the best teams in the Summit League in defensive boards per contest as well. So these guys really getting the job done on both ends of the court. And it doesn't really matter how good or bad your competition is. Shooting the 3-ball is shooting the 3-ball. If you get hot against anybody, you're going to win the game. Now, they're taking on a Providence team who lost 2 out of their last 3 ball games themselves. heading into the tourney, and they scored just 58 points in their most recent contest against Creighton. Now, the Friars failed to cover in 3 out of their last 4 neutral site contests, and they're shooting just 43% from the field this year. Now, total-wise, Providence went 70% to the over in their last 10 outings. Meanwhile, South Dakota State, they are 12-7 to the over in all of their contests away from home. I don't think this is going to be a popular play. There's got to be an upset or two somewhere. I think this might be one of them. Give me South Dakota State +2 in the over 149.5. Next game, Memphis, Boise State, 145 East. Memphis is -3 with a total at 133.5. Now, the Tigers have lost only 2 games since January 20th, and they're averaging over 75 points a game this year. Jalen Duren scoring over a dozen points a game, along with 8 rebounds. Meanwhile, DeAndre Williams is averaging double-digit points a game himself, along with 5 boards. Now, when it comes to defensive play in this one, the Tigers are limiting their competition to just 39% shooting from the field. They're taking on a Boise team who's had some offensive woes all season long. The Broncos are averaging only 68 points a game, and they're making just 64% of their shots from the stripe. Now, total-wise, Boise went 4-3 to the under at a neutral site this year. Meanwhile, Memphis went 4-1 to the under in their last 5 neutral site games themselves. I'm going to lean toward Memphis -3 in the under 133.5. Next ball game, it is going to be Norfolk State versus Baylor, 12 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Baylor's -21 with the total at 137.5. Now, the Baylor Bears allow only 63 points a game, and they're holding their opponents at just 29% shooting from 3-land, and that's going up against the toughest teams in the country, game in and game out. Now, offensively, L.J. Cryer is scoring 13.5 points per contest, along with 47% shooting from 3-land. Meanwhile, James Akinjo is scoring over 13 points a game himself, along with a couple of boards and 5 assists. When it comes to scoring in this one, the Bears are averaging 77 points a game. Now, they're taking on a Norfolk team who failed to cover recently against the likes of Delaware State, South Carolina State, and Maryland Eastern Shore. And although the Spartans have dominated all these small schools this year, they're still shooting just 69% from the stripe, and they're making only 32% of their 3 balls away from home. Now, total-wise, Norfolk is 5-1 to the under in their last 6 neutral site contests. Meanwhile, Baylor, on the other side, they saw unders recently against the likes of Texas, Oklahoma State, and TCU. I'm going to go ahead and lean toward Baylor -21 and the under 137.5. All right, next ball game, it is going to be Longwood versus Tennessee, 2:45 p.m. East. Tennessee's -18, totals 132. Now, the Volunteers are on a 7-game winning streak, and they allowed just 60 points a game in those contests. And once again, just keep in mind, that's all against SEC competition. Now, when it comes to defensive performance in this one, the Vols are in the top 25 in the country in fewest points allowed per game. And they also went 4-1 against the spread in their last 5 at a neutral court. Now, scoring-wise, Kennedy Chandler is averaging over 13.5 points per contest, along with 3 rebounds and 4 assists. Meanwhile, Santi Vescovi scoring 13 points a game himself, along with 40% shooting from beyond the arc. Now, they're taking on a Longwood team who failed to cover recently against the likes of Radford and Hampton. Now, the Lancers are also averaging just 68 points a game away from home, and they're shooting only 41% from the field in that same category. Now, total-wise, Tennessee went 6-3 to the under in their last 9 ball games. They're also 63% to the under in all of their contests away from Knoxville. I'm going to go ahead and lean toward Tennessee -18 in the under 132. Next matchup, it is going to be Richmond versus Iowa, 3:10 p.m. East. The Iowa Hawkeyes are -10.5, totals 150. Now, the Hawkeyes have done a real nice job covering the point spread this season. They're 10-3 against the spread in their last 13. They've also covered the number in 4 out of their last 5. They covered the number in 4 out of their last 5 neutral site contests. Keegan Murray, he's scoring over 23.5 points a game for the Hawkeyes, 8 rebounds and 40% shooting from 3 land. Meanwhile, Jordan Bohannon is making nearly 40% of his 3-pointers himself. He's also averaging 11 points a game. Now, Iowa's scoring 84 points a game offensively, and they're also in the top 5 in scoring on average per game. They're taking on a Richmond team who failed to cover in 6 out of their last 10 themselves, with outright losses against the likes of St. Bonaventure, Dayton, and VCU during that span. Now, the Spiders are also amongst the worst in the Atlantic 10 in offensive rebounding per contest. When it comes to the total in this one, Richmond went 6-2 to the over in their last 8 neutral site games. Now, Iowa's 4-1 to the over in their last 5 on a neutral court themselves. I'm going to lean toward Iowa minus 10.5 in the over 150. Next matchup, it is going to be Georgia Southern versus Gonzaga, 4:15 Eastern tip-off. Gonzaga's minus 24, totals 149.5. Now, the Bulldogs did fail to cover recently against the likes of San Francisco, St. Mary's, and Santa Clara. As a matter of fact, the Zags failed to cover in 5 out of their last 7 ball games, and they were held to just 57 total points in an outright loss to St. Mary's. They're taking on a Georgia Southern team who's on a 10-game winning streak themselves, and I think they play a similar caliber of competition in the Sun Belt compared to the West Coast Conference. Now, when it comes to defensive play in this one, the Panthers are allowing only 64 points a game. When it comes to the offensive production in this one, Elijah McCaden is averaging nearly 12 points a game, along with 4 rebounds and a couple assists. Meanwhile, Andrei Savrazov is scoring double-digit points a game himself, along with 5.5 boards. Now, total-wise, Georgia Southern went 60% to the under in their last 10 outings. Meanwhile, Gonzaga saw unders recently with the likes of St. Mary's, San Francisco, and San Diego. I'm going to lean toward Georgia Southern plus 24, keeping this one close, and the under 149.5. Next matchup, not on our big screen for some reason, but it is going to be Marquette versus UNC, 4:30 p.m. East. North Carolina's minus 3, totals 152. Now, the Tar Heels lost just 2 games since February 5th, and they covered the number in 70% of their contests during that time frame. UNC is amongst the better rebounding teams in the ACC. They're also scoring just about 78 points a game. Armando Bacot, he's averaging 16.5 points per contest, along with 12.5 big rebounds. Meanwhile, Caleb Love, he's scoring over 15 points a night, along with 3 boards and 3 assists. When it comes to shooting from the stripe, UNC's in the top 20 in the country in offensive free throw percentage. Now, they're taking on a Marquette team who, unfortunately, has a losing record away from home this year, and they failed to cover the point spread in 7 out of their last 8 ball games at any location. So really doing a poor job covering the point spread here over the past month or so. Now, the Golden Eagles give up 74 points a game away from campus, and they're amongst the worst in the country in defensive boards. Now, total-wise, Marquette saw 60% of their contests away from home get over the line. Meanwhile, UNC's 11-5 to the over in their games away from Chapel Hill. I'm going to lean toward North Carolina minus 3 in the over 152. Next matchup, it is going to be New Mexico State versus UConn, 6:50 p.m. East. UConn's minus 6.5 with the total at 131. Now, the Huskies are amongst the best offensive rebounding teams in the country. They're in the top 10 in offensive rebounding per game, and they're also putting up over 75 points per contest. R.J. Cole's averaging over 15.5 points a game himself, along with 3 boards and 4 assists. Meanwhile, Tyrese Martin's drilling 43% of his 3-pointers. He's also scoring 13 points a game. Now, when it comes to defensive play in this one, the Huskies are limiting their competition to just 40% shooting from the field. They're taking on a New Mexico State team who actually lost outright games recently to the likes of Stephen F. Austin and Chicago State. Now, the Aggies are averaging just 69 points a game away from home this year, and they're shooting only 32% from three land. Now, total-wise, the Aggies are 4-1 to the over in their last 5 neutral site contests. Meanwhile, UConn went 9-7 to the over in their games away from home. I'm going to go ahead and lean toward UConn -6.5 and the over 131. All right, next ball game. It is going to be St. Pete's versus Kentucky, 7:10 p.m. East. The Kentucky Wildcats are -18, totals 132. Now, Kentucky's amongst the best rebounding teams in the nation. They're actually in the top 20 in the country in both offensive and defensive rebounding per contest. They're also scoring nearly 80 points a game, and they're shooting well over 48% from the field this year. Oscar Tshiebwe, he's scoring 17 points a night along with 15 big rebounds. Meanwhile, Kellen Grady's making 43% of his three-pointers. He's also averaging 11.5 points per contest. When it comes to defensive play, the Wildcats are holding their competition to just 30% shooting from downtown. They're taking on a St. Peter's team who averages only 66 points a game, and they're making only 67% of their free throws away from home. Now, the Peacocks have suffered losses recently to the likes of Siena and Iona. When it comes to the number, 2 out of St. Pete's last 3 neutral site contests fell under the posted total. Meanwhile, Kentucky's gone 60% to the under away from Lexington. I'm going to lean toward Kentucky -18 and the under 132 in the tight window. All right, next game. Another one not listed on our big screen behind me, but it is going to be Indiana versus St. Mary's, and that's going to be a 7:20 Eastern start time. St. Mary's is -3 with the total at 126.5. And even though St. Mary's is favored by 3 in this one, playing Gonzaga a couple times a year doesn't quite prepare you for this caliber of competition. So to start, the Gales are averaging only 69 points per contest, and they also struggle grabbing offensive rebounds. Now they're taking on an Indiana team who already limits their opponents to just 39% shooting from the field, and that's consistently going up against Big Ten competition on a weekly basis. Now, offensively, Trace Jackson-Davis is scoring nearly 19 points a game, along with 8 rebounds and a couple of blocks. Meanwhile, Xavier Johnson, he's scoring over a dozen points a game himself, and also does a pretty nice job shooting from three land. Now, total-wise, both of these teams are well known for playing some pretty tough defense, and I think total-wise, you just got to hope you can dodge overtime. But either way, I'm going to lean toward Indiana +3 and the under 126.5. All right, next ball game. Another one not on our big screen, but it is going to be Creighton versus San Diego State, and that's going to be a 7:27 Eastern start time. San Diego State's -2 with the total at 119.5. Now, the Aztecs are arguably the best defensive team in the nation. Tough to score against them. They really slow things down. They control the pace. These guys allow only 57 points a game, and they're actually in the top 5 in the country in defensive field goal percentage. Really no surprise there. And just for reference purposes, the Aztecs allowed over 66 points only once this year through 31 ball games. That's incredible. Now, scoring-wise, Matt Bradley's averaging 17 points a game along with 5 rebounds and a couple assists. Now, Bradley's also drilling nearly 42% of his three-pointers. Meanwhile, Keyshawn Johnson is making over 55% of his shots from the field. Now, they're taking on a Creighton team who already struggles with the ball in their hands. The Blue Jays are averaging only 65 points a game away from home, and they're making only 28% of their three-pointers in that same category. As bad as these guys have been offensively for the most part of the season, it actually seems like they're getting worse offensively toward the end of the year. The Blue Jays have been held to just 64 points or less in 4 out of their last 6 ball games. When it comes to the scoring in this one, no real surprise here. Creighton went 5-1 to the under in their last 6 outings, 61% to the under in all of their contests away from home. Meanwhile, San Diego State, they're officially 6-0 to the under this year, on a neutral site court. I'm going to lean towards San Diego State -2 and the under 119.5. All right, next contest, it is going to be Vermont versus Arkansas, 9:20 p.m. East. Arkansas is -5 with the total at 139.5. And even though Vermont really likes to slow things down, they're taking on an Arkansas team who's done nothing but cover point spreads over the past couple of months or so. The Razorbacks have gone 15-3 against the number in their last 18 contests this year, and that's good for over 83% in that category. These guys have done nothing but cash tickets. Now, the Razorbacks can also play a little defense of their own. They're allowing only 68 points a game, and they're limiting their competition to just 41% shooting from the field. Now, scoring-wise, J.D. Note is averaging over 18 points a game, along with 4 rebounds and a couple of steals. Meanwhile, Stan Umade is scoring nearly a dozen points a game himself, along with 4 rebounds. And speaking of offensive production, the Razorbacks are averaging 77 points a game, and they're amongst the best in the SEC in offensive rebounds. Now, they're taking on a Vermont team who failed to cover recently against the likes of Maine, UMass Lowell, and Hartford. Now, the Catamounts are also 0-3 against the number in their last 3 neutral site games. When it comes to the total in this one, Arkansas saw their last 6 straight all get over the number. They're also 60% to the over in all of their contests away from home. I'm going to lean toward Arkansas -5 and the over 139.5. All right, next game actually should be a good one. Should be a game of interest. If you can watch it, I certainly recommend it. It is going to be San Francisco versus Murray State, 9:40 p.m. East. And I know a lot of folks, especially, your people who just watch March Madness, probably not familiar with these teams, but we're going to dive into this one here. Now, Murray State is -1.5 in this one. Total's 136 in a hook. So once again, Murray -1.5, total 136.5. Now, Murray State hasn't lost a game since December 22nd of last year, and that was a loss against Auburn. Now, the Racers have gone 15-2 straight up away from home this season. They played exceptionally tough defense all season long. The Racers allow only 62 points per contest, and they're limiting their competition only 40% shooting from the field. Now, offensively, KJ Williams is scoring over 18 points a game, along with 8 rebounds. Meanwhile, Tevin Brown is scoring nearly 17 points a game himself, along with 5 boards and nearly 40% shooting from three-land. When it comes to offensive production in this one, the Racers are scoring over 79 points a game this year, and they rank in the top 20 in the nation in shooting from the field. Now, they're taking on a San Francisco team who lost 3 out of their last 6, and they may have to go to work without one of their top scorers, Yawain Masalski, who's battling a knee injury. Now, total-wise, San Francisco went 5-1 to the under in their neutral site games. Meanwhile, Murray State is 65% to the under in all of their contests away from home. I'm going to lean toward Murray. I'm going to lean toward Murray State -1.5 and the under 136 and a hook. All right, next ball game. Akron, UCLA, 9:50 East. UCLA is -13.5. Total's 128. And as good of a year as the Bruins have had, they did fail to cover the point spread recently against the likes of Arizona, USC, and Oregon. Matter of fact, these guys have failed to cover in 3 out of their last 5 neutral site contests. And their opponents are actually connecting on nearly 73% of their free throws against them. They're taking on an Akron team who hasn't lost a game since February 17th, and they went 7-1 against the spread in their current winning streak. Now, the Zips have played they've really played some lockdown defense in that MAC conference. The Zips allow only 62 points a game when traveling, and they rank in the top 10 in the country in that particular category. Now, offensively, Ali is scoring over 14 points a game, and he's also making 41% of his three-pointers. Meanwhile, Xavier Castaneda, he's doing a nice job shooting from three-land himself. He's also scoring 13.5 points per contest. Now, total-wise, Akron went 12-6 to the under in all of their games away from home. Meanwhile, UCLA's gone 11-6 to the under in their contests away from their home court themselves. I'm going to go ahead and lean toward Akron plus 13.5 and the under 128. And with that, guys, we're going to jump into our next and final matchup of the show. It is going to be Texas Southern versus Kansas, and that's going to be a 9:57 Eastern start time. Kansas is minus 21.5, totals 144. Now, the Jayhawks have been pulverizing teams down the home stretch, and they've allowed only 64 points a game in their last 5 outings. And speaking of defensive play, Kansas has limited their opponents this season to just 30% shooting from three-land. Now, scoring-wise, Ochai Agbaji's averaging nearly 20 points a game, along with 5 rebounds and 40% shooting from long range. Meanwhile, Christian Braun's done a nice job shooting from beyond the arc himself. He's also averaging 14 points per contest. Now, when it comes to offensive production, the Jayhawks score 79 points a game, and they're also in the top 20 in offensive field goal percentage. Now, they're taking on a Texas Southern team who failed to cover recently against the likes of Prairie View, Southern University, and Arkansas Pine Bluff. Now, the Tigers are scoring only 66 points a game away from home this year, and they're shooting only 29% from three-land in that very same category. Now, total-wise, Kansas went 60% to the under in their last 10 outings. I'm going to go ahead and lean toward Kansas, minus 21.5, and the under 144. And with that, guys, that's going to do it for me. Don't forget to check me out on BrockPage.com. If you do end up getting a membership here today on my website, just keep in mind you're going to get billed the day you sign up and then the first of every month following that. So if you do end up getting a membership here today on BrockPage.com, you're going to get access to that content all the way through the end of March. I always tell folks in every single video, the earlier in the month you sign up, the better. And guys, if you want to get access to every single bet that I give out on that website, you're going to want to sign up for my board member tier package. But most importantly, guys, got to thank you for joining me right here on YouTube. Really hope you enjoyed all this great free content, all this great free information. And with that said, guys, happy Wednesday or Thursday to you, depending on when you're watching this. Best of luck to you. And I look forward to seeing you later on today on my website at BrockPage.com.